This is Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. On the show, you'll hear from innovators in the food space. We'll have disruptive conversations with people from around the globe who are taking the lead on topics like food sustainability, ending world hunger, food security, and so much more. I'm your host, Paul Newnham. In this episode, we're talking to Sammy Monsour, chef, restaurateur, author, and political food activist. Sammy is a Michelin award-winning chef whose restaurants have earned recognition not just for the exceptional cuisine, but also for pioneering sustainability practices. Today, we'll explore how culinary expertise can be leveraged to drive meaningful change in our food systems and environmental policy. You'll hear about his journey from washing dishes in his parents' restaurant to lobbying Congress for sustainable seafood legislation, how he's reimagining American comfort food through an eco-conscious lens, and why he believes chefs have a crucial role to play in solving global food challenges. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Paul.
So we've known each other for quite some time, but for our listeners, I wonder whether you can share just a little bit of your journey from starting working in your parents' restaurant to becoming a Michelin-recognised chef and all the other amazing things you've done. Just tell us a little bit about that story and that journey.
I think I've worked on summing this up in a meaningful way for years. So here it goes. I'm 13 years old. My dad says, "You're coming to the restaurant tonight. It's a Friday night." The dishwasher called out. I'm like, yeah, because at the time I was working at the family luncheon deli counter. So I would go in and I would clean the kitchen after I got out of school, and nobody was in there. There was no action. So now I'm in the action. And so I'm like trying to keep up on a busy Friday night. I'm looking around this kitchen. It's just filled with like badasses. They just know how to do it all. And I'm like, I need to learn how to do that. I was in a team environment and there was energy, and I really plugged off that. So I decided to go to CIA. I worked in that restaurant, learned how to cook, got on the line, decided to go to CIA, went there for 4 years, traveled around a bit, ended up in Boston, opened up my first restaurant when I was 28. So to me, I'd been at it for 15 years and it felt well-earned and well-deserved, but I knew there was a lot more to it than just that. Meanwhile, we're getting rave reviews. We're getting like on national lists. We've got like a 4-hour wait on a Tuesday night for people to just come and get like my weird bar food. And it's amazing, but it's really hard. And I'm like, how am I going to do this for another like 40 years? Like, this is it. I've achieved the goal, right? And around that time, I got invited to participate in a Chefs Collaborative national campaign to save Bristol Bay from pebble mining. I participated in that. I learned what that meant. I'll keep this brief, but I learned what that meant. And I saw how I could put something on my menu and use the power of sourcing and storytelling to inoculate my community into the culture of helping to fight against something that would devastate natural watershed, right? And that's when I realized it. I got the light bulb. This is it. This is what I'm supposed to learn more about and get better at. Yeah, I could get better at cooking, but I could also just get better at being a better person and paying it forward. And so that was what set the course for the rest of my career from there. That is why we met when we did, which I think was 7 years later.
So you grew up in a family of restaurateurs. How did that actually impact your approach to food as well? So how did that shape the way that you came into this space?
So my pops, his father was a chef. He grew up working at his father's restaurant in the 50s, and this was in New York. And all of his older brothers, like all 8 of them, were his chefs too. And so it was harsh conditions for my dad, and that kind of was a little bit how I was brought up, but my dad is an angel and a sweetheart. So for us, food was familial. It was a mom and pop joint that I grew up in. It was literally my mom and pop owning a mom and pop joint for the neighborhood, and the family worked there. And we had other employees too, but it was a way. They were small business people. So things like feeding the community and getting to know your guests was everything to us. Not wasting the food was like a thing of, it was so important because it was like we weren't allowed to waste the food on our plate at home because I grew up in a household of 9 and my dad's a chef, so he's working with a budget and he's like, we don't waste. And that mentality carries into the kitchen. And so there was a lot of things that were important that revolved around the infrastructure of what's important to me today, like waste management programs with your food. Like, what do you do about bringing it in and what do you do about where it ends up? And again, just the culture of making sure that the dining experience is familial, it's for the community, and that it's a sacred place to satisfy your soul at the end of the day.
Your work has spanned a huge number of different kind of approaches. You've been in fine dining right through to more fast casual concepts and the like. How do you think about those kinds of values across all the different spaces? Is it the same in each kitchen? Do you bring the same principles, or is there different challenges, different starting points?
Okay, so there definitely are different challenges when you go into different sectors of the dining industry. And I've dabbled in a few, but I think that where I find myself succeeding and being happy is in that privately owned, chef driven, we're trying to do the best we possibly can environment. And I don't know what to call that anymore because I don't think it's called fine dining, although our service standards are fine dining, our sourcing and our culinary techniques are fine dining, but there's more warmth. There isn't tablecloths. We don't put things on the menu like caviar and truffles and foie gras because it's expected of us. But if the Truffle Brothers come by with a truck of fresh black truffles in the winter that they literally just came back from like Italy with, I'll buy a couple $100 and I'll run them on a weekend special because they're delicious, right? And so I was ultimately taught that I cook American food and the breadth of American food really is from ketchup to caviar. And so cheeseburger and french fries make sense at my restaurant the same way a massive seafood tower with all of the delicate treasures of the ocean does. So I'm able to like satisfy most of your cravings and most of my cravings through that space. And fortunately, because of that, we're able to charge what we need to charge to hire professionals to execute on a high level and to be able to source sustainably and to use better technologies to mitigate our footprint, et cetera. And because we're able to do that, I think we're very lucky. We're talking about going out to restaurants with a check average of $90 a person. That's a luxury. And so we're mindful of that. But maybe not everybody can afford to eat with us. But if you just wanted to come in and get a cheeseburger at the bar, you can, and you can probably afford that. And we also make sure that we're sourcing from small stakeholders, like small family farmers. So like there's other ways to engage with the community than who can afford to eat with you, right? It's like, what about the lobstermen that are just making a living, right? Let's buy from them instead of buying it all shucked up, frozen in these perfect packages from like US foods.
Let's dive into the sustainability conversation a little bit. You mentioned Pebble Beach. Is that where you first became involved in sustainable food systems? Or, I mean, it sounds like you've been born into this in the restaurant industry, but when did you first sort of discover that you had this passion? This is what it was about.
The light bulb sparked when I participated in a national campaign with Chefs Collaborative to stop pebble mining in Bristol Bay. Bristol Bay is a watershed that is home to the world's most abundant population of wild sockeye salmon, and they run through there to spawn every year. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of fish. So the idea was it's very apples to apples. Like, we're going to devastate this amazing treasure, this natural, precious resource, so that some other company can get what they consider to be a precious resource from the earth, which is not a living animal. It's precious metals that they pebble mine for. So things like copper and iron. I mean, if you start to get into the metallurgy of it all and what the mining means, you can read into it. I did. And I was like, that's interesting, but that's basically like a money grab. And so when I learned about the politics of the food and how activating your voice and getting your community hyped up about it and signing letters and sending emails to your representatives. There's so many layers to what we can do as a chef to fight the good food fight. It's just like, that's what got me into it, because I didn't know any of that. I could barely understand it. And I was like, I need to learn more about this, right? And so once you go down the rabbit hole and you get passion for something, it absorbs you. And since this is good stuff, you want it to absorb you.
And so since you've been involved and since you've started to connect there, what are some of the most impactful changes you've seen around how food activism has kind of really come into the role of chefs and the work that you do?
I think one of the coolest things that I'm seeing right now is that food activism is providing chefs with a new path outside of the kitchen. At a certain point, as chefs, no matter how good we are, if we don't start to try to figure out what life outside of our restaurants are, we live a very unsustainable, stressful, unhealthy life for the most part. There are some chefs out there that are so good at it that they can do it all. But for people like me and people that I really look up to and that I try to like study and follow, being able to be a good food activist and a good chef, if you can get your business on lock right now, like my kitchen in LA is humming right now. I'm not there. I'm with you in Mexico City trying to learn more so that I can make better choices for that restaurant. So the fact that I don't need to be there anymore means that I've been able to empower more of my people, give them more promotions, teach them how to be the executive chefs and the sous chefs, and I can be out here in the world and still make a living.
That's a great way to see that. And I think being able to balance that, you've talked about the many roles chefs play, and you've been able to take some of your advocacy to Capitol Hill, to the Food and Agriculture Organization in Rome. We've been there together. There's been lots. We're now in Mexico. You've been, I know, to Norway, lots of other parts. What's been one of the most rewarding things that you've done in your food activism journey? What's something that you're super proud of?
It's everything, man. It's every time somebody asks me to participate in something that I think is just truly incredible. It's all so rewarding. Like seeing a message from you and asking me if I wanted to come to Mexico. I mean, this is really important stuff. This is equally as important as it was when you asked me to come to Rome, or when I got to go to Norway and Chile, or when I get to go to DC, and being around those people that are in the room and learning from them. It's all just so important. And it's like a privilege to get to be in the room and to be at that table.
We're in Mexico. We're here at a place called Cimet. Obviously, we've had some tacos, but what's this been about? What's kind of mulling over in your brain? And I know you're in the middle of it at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I just had told one of my chefs in LA who's a Mexican American. I was telling him about the experiences I've had thus far here. And I said, chef, it's like, I know we hear this a lot, but being here and walking around and seeing and smelling and touching and tasting, it gives you another level of understanding and appreciation for starters, how ancient this culture is, but also how amazing their civilization was thousands of years ago and what they were able to accomplish through agriculture. And that there's these amazing restaurants. I mean, like when we went to La Gruta today, I'm like, this is like what Dan Barber was doing at Stone Barn. But like, who's ever heard of this place? You know what I mean? So they're not doing it for the PR. They're doing it for the community and for the culture. And what I'm blown away by is how many delicious tortillas I've had, right? Like it doesn't all boil down to a taco, but it's like, okay, we're in a vault with over 26,000 varieties of maize. Then we go to a lab where they're creating different masas based off different varieties of corn here at Cimet. I go, wow, that's amazing. I'm like blown away. But then we go to another restaurant and they're doing the same thing. They're growing their own corn in their field on their land to try out different tortillas. And then we walk right up and there's 3 different, distinctively different tortillas that we get to try. Like this is just going on right now. Like I'm so blown away by it because if you hear like a little bit of this right now in LA, people are blown away. It makes it sound like it's not happening anywhere else. Like if an LA chef is like, oh, he's getting like some really interesting corn from Mexico that nobody's got. And it's like, it makes it seem like nobody gives a shit about that here. And he just knows like some oddball, but it's like, no, these people here take it seriously and they're like heavily involved in it with the science and the agriculture all the way to the plate.
I know one of the things that kind of jumped out at me is just how they're not only looking at that growing of the corn, but they're also looking at the application. They're bringing that full service in. But looking at today when they had the tortillas in their hand and they were like going the perfect tortilla bit, and I'm like, this is the sort of thing you were doing in the kitchen yesterday, but with other ingredients. You're going, I've got to get this right. You guys, scientists and chefs, have so much in common, I guess, in the way that you're testing, you're learning, but you have slightly different objectives, but also united outcomes. So it's kind of cool.
Right. Well, but even yesterday we talked about some scientists, and it's more common that they're part of the food system, but they can become disconnected of the final result. So it's great to bring them to the table and remind them that food is delicious, and a great meal can shift a path. It can have ripple effects that aren't necessarily measurable. And then they go back and they look at their work with a bit more relevance, right? So it was unexpected that they're going from the farm and the field in the science lab all the way to, cool, we got all of this, but like, is it going to make a good tortilla? And these are our standards. I want it to do this with it and make sure that it doesn't crack. I need to be able to roll it up. I need to be able to fold it in half, because they're like, it doesn't matter. All of that stuff we've done so far, it could save the world. But if it's a tortilla that's going to fall apart in my hand, we need to keep trying until we check all of the boxes. I mean, and that is dedication to excellence at the highest level.
Yeah. No, I was so impressed to see that here at Simit and to just see that connection, but then also to see the openness to bring in chefs and to celebrate and to think about all the ingredients. I mean, they're not only working just with maize and wheat here. There's sorghum, there's beans, there's millets, there's all this other diversity of diet is something I've also really appreciated seeing here. In terms of challenges facing our food system today, as a chef working across the world, being based in America, what do you see as the biggest challenge?
There's so many of them, right? Maybe you just find the one that pulls to your heartstrings. And I think that public education means a lot to me, because the people that I work with have been on my team, are like my family. And so I see the importance in giving education to the workplace to provide value to the job beyond just financial compensation. And so when I started to do that and peel back the layers and see some of my guys coming in with like a little bag of Doritos and a Coca-Cola as a snack, and I tell them like, you can eat anything you want here, anytime you want to, and it doesn't cost you anything. And they're like, yeah, that's cool, but they still want that. And that's okay. And I don't have any problem with that. So what I started to do was do lessons on why those are delicious, and also to do lessons on when you walk by these ingredients, maybe they're never on your prep list. And so you don't work with the maltodextrin, or you don't work with the tapioca starch, or you don't work with the citric acid. But if you start reading on the back of your package what's in your food, and you learn why that's so damn good, you can actually make it. Those aren't the ingredients that are making the chip bad. It's probably the oil that it was fried in and the genetically modified crop that the dough was made from, right? And so I think that if people knew, because the common thing that I see is like, oh, there's all this stuff on the back that I can't pronunciate. And it's like, well, those are hydrocolloids and spices. Those are ingredients of the modern molecular kitchen. And if I told you gelatin was in this, or pectin was in this, most people would go, oh, gelatin comes from animal bones and pectin comes from orchard fruits and berries. Those are organic, right? But xanthan gum or agar-agar, that's a chemical, whatever. It's like, no, xanthan gum comes from sugar, agar-agar comes from seaweed. These are all stabilizers, they're jellifiers, etc. What's wrong with this bag of chips is your GMO corn that has been modified to be laden with chemicals its whole life. So it's growing through herbicides and pesticides in a soil void of nutrient, which produces a crop not only void of nutrient, but like grown with chemicals. That's what you're eating. Dude, eat the fried corn chip. It's delicious, but find the good maize. So I think if we can do that through public education, cool storytelling, not food shaming, that's how we do that. And I think it's an important mission, because it touches on everybody. It doesn't matter what your class is or whether you're a vegan or a carnivore. This is something that can help everybody make better informed food decisions.
That education's so critical. What would you say to chefs who are starting out? What's something that you would say is really important that you maybe wish you had been told, or a piece of advice that you'd been given?
Listen, I think that I was so lucky to be given tons of great advice. And I was also wired to succeed. So the biggest pitfall that I fell into that could have ruined my career was I got into severe alcohol abuse. I'd never done cocaine, I've never done hard drugs, but it's easy if you kind of only have one vice to justify it. So I would say look out for substance abuse and place your health first, because that was the big mistake that I did make. But the things that I think helped me out as well was to protect my passion at all costs. So if I wasn't happy with what I was doing for an extended period of time, I would leave. I will never force myself to work somewhere that made me miserable for years, because what happens to people is they just leave the industry altogether. You have to protect your passion. Also, you need to be curious. You need to be so curious that when you hear a rap song, if you don't know the word, if you don't know what that means, and I talk to my guys about this. Hey, who knows what Bed-Stuy is? You've heard this song like a million times. Kendrick Lamar says Bed-Stuy, and everyone's like, I don't know, chef. And I'm like, well, why don't you want to know? It's Bedford-Stuyvesant. It's where Biggie Smalls is from. That's why they're talking about it. If you have that curiosity to walk by the citric acid and say, what is that? And just look it up. We're empowered to have all this information on our tools. So as long as you're curious and you protect your passion, just go with the flow, man, because you're not going to know where your journey is going to take. You can't predict your light bulb moment. And meet as many cool people as you can, because you got to stay inspired.
Great advice and really critical. What gives you hope for the future of sustainable food?
Every time I get to come out into the world with people like you and see that the world is filled with people like you, Paul, that are just out here daily, making it a better place, connecting the dots, forging meaningful relationships, making sure that new people get to meet. You know, you're always saying like, oh, you should meet this person, you should talk to this person, you should see what they're doing or what they know, because it's so critical. Unless you are somebody who's zoned in on going to Aspen Ideas Climate Summit, or you're part of these cultures that do, which for people like us, we're lucky, and we get exposed to the good stuff that's going on. We see that the innovation is there and the technology is there. There's no wait to make the world a better place. It needed to start yesterday. And so we're actively doing what we can.
I think, and that's critical. And I mean, you're talking about education, and I think you've talked about curiosity. You've talked about how do you be curious and then open up connection. And that's what you're talking about here. It's making those connections. And I think for us to change the world at speed and at pace, this is something we need to continue to accelerate. And so it's about people connecting, being curious, and helping to really think in ways that are building connections and solutions, I guess. And that's kind of like what you do in the kitchen. I was watching you the other day and you're riffing off your experience, of course. You've got a deep experience of understanding those ingredients, that curiosity, but you're also bringing those ingredients together with technique, with love, with patience at times, but also at other times, you know, pulling that out. And I think there's something in that in terms of the way we are going to solve some of the problems in the world as well that we can learn from chefs.
Yeah, I heard something great a few years ago. There's no silver bullet. There's some people that believe in their cause so much that they're like, listen, all we have to do is what I'm telling you, and it's over. We fixed it all. And it's great when people are that passionate and believe in that. And I don't have anything against that, but that's not true. There's no silver bullet, and there's no one modality that's going to do it. Even in the kitchen, right? I'm relying on science, mathematics, history to cook and to make informed decisions, not just like my personal history with food, but the history that I've learned and studied to understand why flavor mapping works the way it does. But then there's like interpersonal communication skills where it's like, if you can't get along with people, you're not going to fix the world because nobody likes you. So you've got to be mindful.
Yeah.
I can be really intense in the kitchen and I got to snap out of it sometimes and be like, all right, dude, it's just dinner. Like, chill out.
I mean, those interconnections I think are so critical. Well, one question that I'd like to always ask everyone is a recurring question that kind of helps ground us all. We've talked a little bit about it, but we all like to eat. We all need to eat. We're all here because of what we ate yesterday, because of the energy that gave us, because of the nutrients that gave us. So as a chef, what's your favorite food?
Depends on the night of the week now, boy. We kind of have a few like weekly cravings.
Yeah.
So I like a big, crunchy, juicy, refreshing salad on Monday because I crave it after treating myself through the weekends. But like Sundays, like kind of like grew up home cooking, maybe a braise.
Yeah.
We love doing like fried chicken or like gnarly burgers on a Friday, cooking maybe in the wood-fired oven or on the plancha outside on Saturday. Tacos on Tuesdays, always. Or if it's not tacos, it will be like tamales or enchiladas. Or we lived in LA for way too long to not make amazing Mexican food, or at least as good as we can make. But we have access to the ingredients, so why can't we make it, you know? So yeah, it's just kind of cravings based.
Well, thank you, Sammy, for joining me. Thanks for joining us on the show. Thanks for what you do. Super excited to see what's next in the next part of your journey, but I really appreciate you joining us on the show.
Such a pleasure.
You've been listening to Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. Future Fork is produced by Disruptive Consulting Solutions and supports the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. For more info, head to the website futureforkpodcast.com. This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative. So you don't miss an episode of Future Fork, make sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Paul Newnham, and I'll see you in the next episode.